Welcome back to your Feel Good Breakfast Show, allowing that energy to subside for just a moment as we take cognizance of a massive loss, obviously, to the world of cricket. But I think what makes it so tragic, a young man passed away yesterday. Of course, Phil Hughes, a young Australian cricketer, was struck on the back of the head after receiving a typical fast ball from bowler Sean Abbott, collapsed to the ground. Moments later was rushed to hospital. Whether that was fast enough, there has been debate there as well. And sadly, yesterday morning passed away due to those injuries.
Tragic.
We've got Dr. Darren Green joining us here in this morning.
Great to be here. Thank you.
Thankfully bringing through a model to be able to show us exactly what transpired, because I think a lot of people are very confused. You've got the headgear on for a reason in cricket. There are a ton of fast bowlers. That delivery is used in every game of cricket played across the 100%. World. What actually happened? Can you break it down for us?
Yeah, I think the bottom line is you've got a really, really high speed or high velocity injury. And with that, you can imagine that if any force or object strikes the skull, you can imagine there's a displacement of that object. So you have an accelerating force of the brain inside the skull and the skull itself. And sometimes when we have a closed head injury, for example, whether you're bumping your head against a wall or against someone's knee in a rugby game, exactly the same thing happens. The brain can actually shift inside the skull with that jolting movement and cause then rupture or tears of the actual brain tissue and brain cells. In this case, however, there was a direct blow to the base of skull, which is just behind the ear area. And that area is very important because if you have a crack along those lines, a fracture, in other words, you could then have bleeding into the skull. So where we look, for example, at the base of skull, if you've got blood collecting at the base of the skull, it presses on the brain stem, which comes through that hole right there. And pressure on the brain stem, that's what then suppresses your breathing center and your basic living function.
Core function, yeah.
So that's what happens. And the other mechanism that's postulated by his physicians is that he had a carotid artery dissection. So your neck vessels on the side of your neck come up the neck, basically, and before they go into the skull.
Maybe you can bring that picture up.
Yeah, let's have a look at that.
Fantastic diagram. Okay, there
so you can see basically the carotid artery, and as it comes up and moves up the neck towards the base of skull, if that artery, for example, is stretched too rapidly and direct blows like you can have there, you can have a tear of the intima, which is the inner lining of the artery, which makes a flap. That flap breaks off, travels up the artery, right into the brain, can block off some of the vessels and cause, for example, a stroke or a massive blockage in that part of the brain specifically. The big issue here is pressure building up at the base of the skull. And why we suspect a base of skull fracture is because the eyewitnesses even describe bleeding from his right ear. And one of the symptoms that you have with a skull base fracture is bleeding in the ear. The others are things like the raccoon eyes, etc.
Well, okay, Doctor, we'll continue this in just a second. I'm also very fortunate this morning to have on the line SA paceman Monde Zondeki. Monde, very good morning, sir. Monde, are you there?
Yeah, now can you hear me?
Fantastic. Thanks so much for joining us. I'm sure, like everyone else in the world of cricket, or in fact, the globe over, absolutely shocked by the loss of a very young cricketer as well. But with a delivery that you must have bowled 100, if not 1,000 times in your own career, one really has to feel for Sean Abbott, the young gent, he himself younger than Phil, who bowled that delivery. What would you say to Sean if you had him in your company right now?
Yeah, you're right. We use that ball so often in our careers, especially as a way of trying to intimidate or try to get someone out or get his feet away, as they say in cricket. I honestly, I don't know what I would say to someone like that, especially guys so young, with his whole career ahead of him. He's got to be gutted, and I would probably take some time off from cricket if I was him, and try to reevaluate and. You know, as you said, everyone's been saying it's a freak accident. That's a ball that's bowled 100 times in one test match in a day. So that's certainly a freak accident. It's something he's going to have to try and get over. I don't know how. I think it's the second time I've heard of someone dying from a blow in the head. So if you think about how often that happens, it's a very rare occasion. So I feel for the guy, and I hope he gets back onto it again sometime soon.
Do you think this is going to have an adverse effect in terms of, we know that there are a lot of cricketing parents out there, a lot of cricketing structures that are going to obviously be hit by the same shockwave. Do you think we're going to see a change in that? Do you think we'll see pressure being put on to remove that kind of aggression from the game? Or is that a vital part of especially international cricket that is, we know, played at a very intense, very aggressive level?
No, I doubt they'll change the rules about how many bounces you can bowl, especially in international cricket. I think guys like seeing fast bowlers coming in and bowling quick and being aggressive. It's just a part of the game. I think what will happen now is they'll probably reevaluate the helmet and how they make it, and maybe try adjust the equipment to make it more protective over that area, over just behind the ear. That's what they spoke about a lot, is maybe having a look at how the helmets are made now. So I think that probably be the main adjustment they'll make. I doubt they'll try to take away the aggression of quick bowlers coming in and bowling short.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. I wish it was over a slightly more positive subject matter, but Mone, thank you very much for weighing in this morning.
Okay, no problem. Thanks. Yeah.
Awesome to talk to a paceman who obviously clearly felt it. You know, as we close out, do you think we will see that knee-jerk reaction? You were saying, lastly, just quickly to fill you in, the fact that helmets, he was actually wearing a slightly older helmet?
Yeah, the newer models of the same company that made his helmet, for example, the newer model is actually, it's got a lower grid, so inferiorly, covering slightly more of the neck, and going backwards as well, almost, I think, another inch. So, you know, whether that would have made a difference to Phil is hard to say.
It's just one of those freak things.
But certainly they are looking at, and the new improved models already have had changes since the one that he was actually wearing.
Oh, well, thank you so much for breaking it down.
In
terms we can actually understand. Always a pleasure to have you in studio, even if it is talking about a tragedy like this. Well, we are going to get positive from here on out and inspire you ahead of the weekend. One of my most inspirational colleagues, Leigh-Anne, is standing by.